Emmanuel Macron says he will delay reforms that sparked days of deadly riots in the faraway French territory of New Caledonia. The French president flew nearly 17,000 kilometres from Paris to the archipelago, which lies east of Australia. At least 6 people have died in more than a week of violence over plans that would allow more French residents of New Caledonia to vote in local elections. President Macron said he would take stock of the situation within a month.
An urgent trip from Paris to the Pacific. Emmanuel Macron arrived in French-ruled New Caledonia with a clear mission.
My intention, and that of my ministers and the government here, is to be here with the people for a return to peace, calm and security as soon as possible.
The archipelago has been rocked by 10 days of riots, in which 6 people have died, and an estimated hundreds of millions of euros worth of damage has been done. The violence was sparked by a voting reform, which critics say would dilute the voice of the indigenous Kanak people, who make up 40% of the population. Macron described the unrest as a totally unprecedented movement of insurrection. Around 3,000 French security personnel are on the ground, and some locals were hopeful Macron's visit could add weight to efforts to restore calm.
Perhaps this will ease some of the tensions we have on a daily basis. I hope we'll find a bit of peace in our country.
Macron later announced the controversial law change would be delayed, despite insisting it is democratic.
I have pledged that this reform will not be forced through in the current context, and that we will allow some weeks to calm the tensions and enable a resumption of dialogue to find a broad accord.
But divisions over New Caledonia's future run deep. Ruled from Paris since being colonised in the 1800s, many indigenous Kanaks resent France's power and want independence. Macron has signalled he wants their support for the law reforms before pushing on, and says he will take stock of the situation again in 1 month.
Let's explore this with Samuel Gorohouna, who's an economist at the University of New Caledonia in Kone. Welcome to DW. What is it about these proposed voting reforms that has so incensed so many people?
To understand the situation in New Caledonia, we have to realize that in 1998, with the Nouméa Accord, the electoral body was frozen, meaning that for people coming after 1998, they cannot vote at the local election, calling the provincial election. And this election is important in New Caledonia because with this election, the people can elect the representative in the Congress, which implement the law in New Caledonia, vote the laws, and the government in New Caledonia. But people that cannot vote at this election can still vote for presidential election, for European election, but for this specific local vote, it's impossible for them to vote. And this was an important equilibrium among the protagonists in New Caledonia, because independentist party, they don't want to be like more minority in New Caledonia.
Okay.
That's why when the government touched this, the electoral body, people were not agreeing.
So it sounds like Paris has extended the franchise. More people on the island, people who have been there for 10 years or more, are now allowed to vote. So what are the arguments against that? That sounds more democratic.
Yes, in New Caledonia, we have kind of two legitimacy. Like for indigenous people, there were the majority before the 70s. So after that, with immigration of coming from France, the Kanak people lost the majority, and that's why the Kanak people, the indigenous people in New Caledonia, they think that. If the French government allow that people coming after within 10 years they can vote, there will be the Kanak people will be more and more in minority, and so we'll lose the country.
So we've had riots. We've had buildings reduced to rubble. We've had 6 deaths. President Macron has blamed growing inequality for this unrest. Is that right, or is this more about these voter reforms?
Both are. It's right, because we have in New Caledonia a lot of inequalities, social inequalities, but with colonial history, social inequalities match with ethnic inequalities. So when the poorest people are the Kanak people, and the richest one are the European people. So that's why it's very difficult to separate what we can call social inequalities with ethnic inequalities, and this makes the situation very, very difficult.
OK, so it sounds, from what you've said, it sounds like these changes in who can vote will actually make this social inequality worse rather than make it better. Why do you think this issue has been so important that President Macron has flown halfway around the world to intervene personally?
Because he can say that he will withdraw the law or not. He's the one who decides now, and it's true that in the past, the situation in New Caledonia was led by the Prime Minister, but since 3 years, it was not the case. And maybe this is why the French president came, to make sure that the situation in New Caledonia, the topic of New Caledonia will be led by the president and more than one minister.
And many might wonder why France is so keen to keep hold of these tiny dots in the Pacific Ocean that are closer to Australia than Europe. Do they have any strategic importance?
It's true that the local archipelagos in the Pacific is important also for the French government, and it's true also that in New Caledonia, for instance, the majority of the population is not in favor of independence, and that's why also we have, as we said before, 2 legitimacy. Kanak people want independence, but also most of the population voted against independence.
OK, so we have an independence movement that has largely lost the argument. We have growing social inequality on an island where local people are poor and European incomers have more of the money. Where has the impetus for this law change come from? Why? What has prompted this push to change the voting rules?
It's difficult to answer the question, but with the frozen electoral body, it gives also for the people who can vote in New Caledonia the provincial election the citizenship, what we call the Caledonian citizenship, and with that they can have they can find jobs easier than people coming from France, for instance. And that's why it's so important also on a social point of view, because people are thinking that if they open the electoral body, they will find job harder. It will be harder for them to find jobs. That's why it's also, on a social point of view, very important.
And bulldozers are now clearing away the rubble of what the French president has described as an unprecedented insurrection. Who picks up the tab for that? And is the damage likely to be repaired quickly?
It's very, very, very difficult in New Caledonia because now it's many factories or shops have been burnt, and actually normally insurance will be used, but I'm not sure if it will be enough for some firms to reopen again. Because it's very hard for everyone here, and the French government said that they will help the companies and the country, the archipelago, to rebuild its economy.
Well, Nathalie Mrgudovic is a teaching fellow at Aston University in the UK. She specialises in French politics and French overseas territories. Well, welcome to DW. What did you make of the French president's announcement today about this delay?
Well, let's say that it was positive that he went to New Caledonia and tried to speak to everybody. When it comes to what he announced, nothing really concrete, I would say. Many wishes and some, it's not even promises, but let's say that he has opened the way for a possible solution, but the solution will only come from the pro-independence and loyalists in New Caledonia.
OK. So could we interpret this lack of a definite proposal as really him, as we say in English, kicking the can down the road? Is he just delaying things until perhaps the less of the world is watching and fewer people appear to be dying?
Oh, no, it's not so much about the world watching what's going on in New Caledonia. It's not so much that, but it's just that Emmanuel Macron is supposed to be very stubborn, and therefore he doesn't want to look like he's stepping back. So, for example, the main issue, which was to introduce this bill and to pass this bill in the Congress, which is the reunion of the senator and the deputy from the parliament, to introduce this new legislation, if you want, opening up the voters, the list of voters for the next provincial election. He was asked to remove that from the pro-independence. But the loyalists wanted it to be maintained. So he was a little bit trying to negotiate. And what he said was that for the moment he was delaying the discussion on that. Okay. There wouldn't be a Congress reunion for the next few weeks. However, the Congress was supposed to meet end of June. So that's a few weeks. You see, he hasn't really moved.
Okay. Thank you for that. Nathalie Mrgudovic, researcher on French politics and French overseas territories. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.